Sir, we'll start in few seconds, sir.
Sure, sure.
Waiting for Vice President, sir.
Sir, Dharmalingam, sir, I'm already connected. Please start the program.
Okay, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Javed, sir. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sarvan?
Sir already joined.
Sir, good morning,
Sir
sir.
already joined. Start the program.
Good morning, ma. We can start.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
Can I start, sir? A very good morning and warm welcome to our Honorable Vice President, Mr. Satish Meka, sir. Honorable Principal, Dr. S. Shambhu Prasad, sir. Vice Principal, sir. Our resource person, Dr. M. Shamim Javed, sir. HOD, sirs of respectable departments, management staff, faculty members, technical staff, and all the participants to the webinar, Funding Support at the Earliest Stage of Entrepreneurship. Myself, Shravan, of third.
Shravan, you are in mute. Okay, speak now.
Sir,
Shravan?
am I audible, sir?
Yes,
No.
now audible.
Sarvan, please carry on, ma.
Okay, sir. Firstly, I would like to invite our Vice President, Shri M. Satish Garu, for welcoming the gathering. Sir, please.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Our today's resource person, Professor Javed, sir, and the faculty coordinators, Dr. Shubodh Panda, sir, Dr. Dharmalingam, sir, all the faculty members and all the students who are present, a very good morning. So in fact, I'm very happy to attend this meeting because I think ours is the only college in East Godavari which has been granted the approval from central government to do the impact lecture sessions. I think this is the result of the wonderful commitment shown by all the faculty members and all the student coordinators of IIC, Institution Innovation Council of Pragati Engineering College. The way you have carried all the earlier programs and the The result of it is that we have been given this special permission to conduct the impact lecture sessions, and I'm very happy that we have identified Javed sir for carrying out our first session. It's a privilege, sir, to have you in this session, and I'm very confident that all our faculty and students will get benefited out of your knowledge. So at the outset, I request all the all the students and faculty coordinators to continue the same spirit in conducting the further programs, and I wish everyone all the best. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to introduce our resource person, Dr. M. Shamib Javed, sir. Sir is an assistant professor and chair of entrepreneurship development at IIM Visakhapatnam. Dr. M. Shamim, sir, is also the chief operating and director of Section 8 company, IIMV Foundation for Incubation, Entrepreneurial Learning and Development. Dr. Shamim, sir, has been training and mentoring startups and handhold them from ideation to implementation phase since the last 3 years. As program director, he has successfully incubated 40 plus ventures under women startup programs being funded by NSDEBD and Goldman over the last 3 years. Dr. Shamim sir also actively trains the faculty and administrators of various government funded technical institutions on various aspects of entrepreneurship development in academic institutions under technical education quality improvement program under the aegis of National Project Implementation Unit, Ministry of Human Resources Development, Government of India. Dr. M. Shamim sir has been actively sharing his knowledge and know-how in the entrepreneurship space as keynote and invited speaker of various forms like ALEAP, Vizag, Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Shamim sir has done his PhD in finance and accounting area from IIM Indore. Prior of joining IIMV, he was working as an assistant professor at MDI, Mushiradabad. Sir has worked as SunGuard for over 5 years of consultant in various domains such as public sector, finance, information, and knowledge management. Dr. Shamim sir's teaching interests are corporate finance, corporate governance, startup finance, financial analysis. His research interests are primarily lies in corporate finance, governance, capital markets, entrepreneurship, and tourist domains. Sir, the stage is open for you, sir. Please, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for the kind introduction. And thank you, Vice Chairman, sir, for your kind words. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So yes, I will just start by sharing my screen. Yes. Yeah. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir. Sir, can
Yes,
you
sir.
make it full screen mode?
Yes, I will do that. Yeah. Is it visible on
Yes,
the
sir.
full screen
Yes.
mode?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Right. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for inviting me for this session. I will try my best to take you through some of the critical points which may be of use to the students of the institution who want to take up entrepreneurship as one of their career options, either now or later in their life. Right? Sorry. Oh. So the agenda is a little long because we have around 2 hours, so I thought I can touch base on multiple points. So we'll start with the very basic of what is a startup and how do we differentiate between an MSME or a small business to a startup, and what are the nuances, because in the nuances of difference there lies the financing of these two different ventures, and therefore from there will start. We'll then get into the point why do and what do we know, what we don't know till now. Then we'll look at the life cycle of a startup and at different stages of the life cycle, what is the financial needs of these startups. Why some of these startups get funded at the right time and why others don't. whom shall one approach? Is it the angel investors, venture capital funds, or the banks? And then we also talk about the role of incubators and accelerators, especially for the funding part of it, and why it is important. We will also talk about which kind of incubator or accelerator you should join if you have a venture. And then we will briefly talk about certain interesting statistics from the Indian startup ecosystem, especially in the funding domain. And then we will try to conclude it with discussing key points which you should bring in your pitch deck whenever you are approaching any investor, right? And then we will look at some of the top funding options for the Indian startups which are available, because we have limitations. We do not have the same market which Europe or US has in terms of the startup ecosystem. If time permits, I'll briefly talk about what IMB Field does, because I also am ambassador of my own incubation center, being a director and COO. And at the end, we will take your questions if you have any doubt. Also, I will urge, if at all you have any question in between, you can ask me. I completely do not have any problem taking up questions at any point. Now, prior to 2015, there was no definition of what a startup is in India. It was when I say there was no definition, there was no formal definition which was approved by the government. It was only in 2015 when the government of India came up with a notification where it identified a startup, and the first definition says till up to 5 years of date of incorporation, which later was revised and made up to 10 years. Then it was said that if its turnover does not exceed 25 crores in the last 5 financial years, right? Any time of your existence, you should not have crossed 25 crores of your total annual revenue, which again was increased to 100 crores. And the last point, which is the most important and fundamental, it is working towards innovation, deployment, development, and commercialization of new products, services driven by technology or intellectual property. So this point was very important, because if you see, I have highlighted the word new. So it's not only about the product, it can also be about process or service, but it has to be new. Second, that it should be something which can be commercialized, which means it can be scaled up, it can be commercialized, and it should be driven by technology or intellectual property, which means, selling rice is okay, but is it driven by any technology or innovation which is new, either in terms of product or in terms of the process? For example, what Swiggy does not do any new product, right? But what they do is a new process. So they bring a new channel of delivery which was not present earlier. So it is a new process which they have formulated. It is not a new product, right? So this is the definition of a startup. Now the question is, what is the difference between a startup and a venture then? How do I, if someone come with an idea to do a business, how do I differentiate between these two, and why this differentiation is so important for understanding the whole startup financing space, right? So just to understand, are the participants on the webinar mode, or they are in the normal mode so they can interact?
So through chat box only they can interact, sir.
Through chat box only they can interact.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
no issues. Fine. And I typically use Zoom, so I don't know if I'm shared the screen. How do I see the chat box? No issues. We will take up, just keep noting the points, especially those who are on the webinar mode, and you can ask me at the end, because I do not see a pop-up here of the questions which you are asking. In between, I'll take a pause and go back to that screen and see some questions, right? Now, the key difference between a small venture and a startup basically starts from the first point of the difference between the focus of profitability versus growth. If I as a venture has a focus on profitability, then I am a small venture. If I have a focus of growth, which means I want to let go profitability in want of growth, which means I can be categorized as a startup. So startups do not look for profitability. Their value comes from their growth, right? So think of Flipkart, think of Zomato, think of Paytm. You might be wondering why they, or Ola, why, how could they just sustain so many years with so much of discount? Is it that there was so much money on the table which other service providers were not giving you or offering or extending that rebate to you? Or is it that they fueled that growth through their own money and giving you some extra discount promotions to attract you to those services? They did it. In fact, a lot of businesses who start on, and especially these startups, they burn a lot of cash in the first few years because they want to capture higher market than to make money from the initial business they do. So what they focus? They focus on growth. They don't focus on profitability. Profitability is for every 100 rupees you invest, how much percentage return are you getting? Now, anything which is established will look more on profitability rather than growth, which means a small venture. So they may not want to scale up. They want to do something localized because there is an opportunity there in that local market. For example, I want to, pick up tuna fish from this seashore, which is next to Vishakhapatnam, and just export it. It is not a new business, right? It is existing business. There's a gap. Maybe there's a lot of demand in this area and very few suppliers, therefore I want to do it. There's no new technology. I'm not going to do anything new. I'm just going to do the same thing. If I'm going to do the same thing, how do I generate value in my company? Through profitability, through the cash flows which I'm getting, not through the growth, right? So that is the first difference. Second is the relationship with the funding. Now, this is very interesting. And what relationship with the funding we're talking about? Think of, two businesses. I'll just, take to the next point. Just I had kept one's plain slide to be able to, use it for my scribbling. So I'll just giving you two examples, right? So let's say there is a Mr. A and Mr. B, right? Now, Mr. A and Mr. B both are IIT graduates. He is a mechanical engineer, and this fellow is a uh, let's say, biomedical engineer, right? He's a biomedical engineer, he's a mechanical engineer. Now, both of them, when they pass out, they wanted to start their own venture. He thought of making a nano robo for cancer treatment, right? And what he wanted to do was a unit to manufacture ball bearings, right? Now we know about their businesses, what they want to do. Think of that both of them need an initial capital of 50 lakhs to be able to either establish their lab or their manufacturing unit to be able to do it, right? Now both of them will go and approach a bank. Which one do you think the bank will be more comfortable giving money to? Now think from the banker's perspective. Who is he? He is a person who might have done all his studies in commerce, so he knows finance well. He has no idea about mechanical engineering. He has no idea about biomedical engineering, and therefore both the projects to him is something which he may not know intrinsically, right? So what he will do, he will go back, take your loan proposals and go back and try to find out from historical data which the bank has. So you might have projected something, right? So you say you give me 50 lakhs, I will be able to, if I make this medicine, I'll be able to give you 5 crores in 3 years, right? They are saying if we establish this, we will be able to make a yearly turnover of, let's say, 60 lakhs, and in 3 years we will be able to give you 1.8 crores, right? Sounds interesting, right? 50 lakhs of investment in 3 years, they can make 1.8 crore. They are saying in 3 years we'll be able to make 5 crores. Now, as a banker, which of these proposals look more interesting? Now, for that, let's understand the banker's problem. So the first problem of the banker, sorry. So the first problem of the banker is his limited knowledge, or his or her limited knowledge, because they are not trained in mechanical engineering or biomedical engineering, so they don't know about. So evaluation of your project is the first challenge. The second challenge is risk. Now, of these, which one will be more risky for the banker? What is the
Mr. B.
investment
Sir
B is
B.
more B? Why? Why will B be more risky?
Because he didn't know anything about related to the product. He is a
But
mechanical engineer.
yes, he's a mechanical engineer and he wants to make a ball bearing unit. So he will know something about it, right? So both of them know about their business they want to do. So that risk is not there. Now think of the banker's risk. How does a bank function? And I will talk about the project risk involved, right? How does a bank function? So any banker will only have 10 to 15% of his own capital, which means his own money, right? Rest all will be deposits. And where these deposits are coming from? From these people like us, right? We keep our money in the bank. Now, what they do, why do we keep here? Because we want to save, right? So we are saving. Savings can be small, big, big, small, dots, so many savings, right? Some big ticket items, some small ticket items, some businessmen, some teachers, and who are not very rich like me. All of them will be, part of this depositor set. Now, bank will then make different big units like this, which will involve some of their money and some of depositors' money, and then give it as a loan to businesses, right? So maybe this 50 lakh will come as a block. Either he gives to first option, Mr. A or Mr. B. Now, what if they could not give him money back? So they might have given them a loan for 5 years or 10 years, but you as a depositor can come anytime and ask for your money. And this is not the only loan they have given. They would have given many such loans in blocks, some of which will be their own money, some of which will be, depositors' money, etc. Now, if you are not able to repay this loan, what happens? Banks are liable to give the depositors their money back, which means if this block, which has, let's say, 15% of their money and 85% of depositors' money, they will have to give back the depositors. So the entire 50 lakh will be a hit on their own capital, which means from that vertical slab, right? So their own capital will start to erode. Their own capital will start to erode and they will cease to exist. And therefore NPAs, you might have thought that only 2 to 3% NPA, why so much of hue and cry about it, right? It's only 2-3% or 4%, because their own capital is only 10 to 15%. 2 to 3% NPA of the total portfolio would have let's say they are today standing at 10% of their own capital, next year they will be at 8%. If 2% continues, next year they will be even lesser, 6%, 4%, 2%. Now think you are in a business with only 2% of your own capital. You are gone. You are dealing with only depositors' money. How much risk are you sitting on? Right? Therefore, bank don't want to take risk. So bank does not care about how much money you can give back, because what is the promise? What is the contract? Now look at the contract. Contract between, let's say, the business and bank. What is the contract? That no matter what, you pay me at the rate of 10%, let's make it 10%, 10% per year, right? It can be 10%, it can be 12%, 15%, whatever is the contract between you, the lender, and the borrower. So there is no upside. Even if the business makes a profit of 30%, the banks will only get 10% of their interest. And if the business makes 5% profit, then also the bank will ask to give them 10%. Now they have to arrange for the money wherever they arrange it from. They sell their asset or they arrange it by taking some other loan. But their commitment is this 10%. So what bank can get from you is limited. So their upside is limited, but their risk is all open. So they're saying if you default as a company, you will not be able to pay me, and that loan becomes a bad loan. So anyways, that money will not get recovered. So what is the point for me to go for a risky business which has higher return when the probability of that higher return is low, which means the probability is low where the probability is high, because this is known technology, right? Ball bearing, manufacturing of ball bearing is a known technology. I hope many of you are mechanical engineers sitting here. You know how ball bearings are done, right? It is no rocket science. It is very easy. You can just set up a ball bearing company. Now now it is established technology. The banker knows that yes, I have many projects in the past where ball bearing companies have come, they have set up their units, they have made 20 to 25% profit. So if this company is claiming that they will make 20% profit, yes, they will be able to make 20% profit because historically I see that it was possible. So they are more comfortable and risk is lower. So where is the risk lower? Risk is lower here and risk is very high here. Think what he's talking about. He's talking about injecting a nano robo in your bloodstream or at the site of the cancer, and these nanorobots will either move into your cell or bloodstream and try to cure that cancer cells. Sounds very interesting. If he gets successful, he has $1 billion company. But the probability of his success is very low because this is all idea. Will it materialize? No. And that's the difference between these two. This Mr. B is a small venture and Mr. A is a startup. So the potential to expand and commercialize and become very big is much, much higher here compared to Mr. B. Mr. B started ball bearing company. It's not because there is no ball bearing company, in the world, and he is the first one to make a ball bearing. No. There are so many companies. He's doing it because there is a gap in this region. Maybe Kia Motors got established somewhere in Andhra Pradesh, and therefore the auto manufacturing parts manufacturing, auto component manufacturers are limited in number, and therefore I see an opportunity. They are getting all their sources from Gurgaon and other region. Therefore, there is transportation cost. If I set up a unit here, they will be buying from me, and therefore I will make some profit. There's a gap, and therefore I want to do this business. So that is about the relationship with the funding, right? So what is that relationship with the funding? Is it going to be a relationship where I do not commit more than a certain percentage, right? Where I know that there is a set upside and therefore I can very easily go and raise money from the bank. But think of Mr. A. What happens to Mr. A? He will not be, bank is not willing to. Both of them want to take money from bank, but bank is not willing to give money to Mr. A. Then what does Mr. A do? So he has to think of an investment option where both upside and downside are shared. And that investment option is called investment in equity. So I say, as a company, I own 100% equity in my company, and I'm willing to give a pie to somebody who invests some 50 lakh in my company, right? And let's say this is 20% of my equity, and say that if this pie grows, then your share also grows, your share also grows, and if the pie becomes smaller, your share also becomes smaller. Now think of this area versus the area which got added here, which is much larger. So with growth, my equity investors will make fortunes. But in this option, they are sharing both upside and the downside. If I grow, right, if I make 5 crores in 3 years, and 20% of it will be much more higher money. But 10% per year, 10% per year is how much? 20 lakhs. Sorry, 5 lakhs per year. So total, how much they will get? 15 lakhs. The investor in this company, but in this company, the investor has a probability of making 1 crore in 3 lakhs. So 15 lakhs versus 1 crore. It sounds interesting, but because risk was higher, therefore bank or institutions like bank are not willing to invest in your company, and therefore I'm forced to find a equity investment, and that equity investment will be based on share. They will share both your upside and downside. And the last one, which differentiates you between from a small venture to a startup, is the plan for end or plan for exit. See, all these people who invest in your company are taking risk, and you might have heard there is a risk. If there is a return, there is a risk. Higher return, higher risk. Lower return, lower risk. Have you ever put your money in savings account or fixed deposit? In today's time, they will give you 5 to 7% return. But if you put your money in some SIP, they promise you to give around 10 to 12% return. Higher return, but risk is also higher, right? If the market does well, they will be able to give you higher return. But if the market does not do well, then they cannot give you 10%. They will be only giving you 1, 2, 3%, sometimes also in negative. So these investors are coming at different stages of the company. They have different risk appetite. They have different growth expectation. And therefore, you need to understand that you need to plan for their exit. So venture capital, not venture capital, any capital, let's say seed, angel, venture, they all have different risk appetite and expectation of growth. And therefore, they will want return from you at different point in time. So as a startup, if I do not have an exit strategy, then I am not a startup. I should have an exit strategy, not from the business, but for the investors. Exit for the investors, right? A small business will take a term loan for 30 years and they will continue with it, keep paying the interest and doing their business, making some money, additional money for them, and they're happy with that. But a startup, on the other hand, because it's not that they don't want money from bank, because they are not sure if they can generate continuous source of income in the early years of their operation, they are not able to get money from the bank. Since they are not able to get money from the bank, therefore what do? They are forced to raise money through equity investment, and that is something which we need to understand. So I will move ahead and understand the stages of startup life cycle. Now the startup life cycle typically starts from the ideation stage. Now from idea stage, you go to a proof of concept stage, which means you might have ideated about it. Let's say, this nanorobot. Let's take the example of this nanorobot to cure cancer, right? So I might have just thought about it. There was a professor who was teaching about nanorobo and what nanorobots are doing in industry today. And suddenly this idea came to my mind because maybe one of my relative, he unfortunately succumbed to cancer, and I was thinking why there is no better cure. And then I had done some research and understood that it was leukemia, and leukemia, the blood cells get defected, and there's no way to cure it because you have to pick individual blood cells and cure it, right? Treat it. Then it came to my mind, okay, can I have a nanorobot to go and attach to every cell and cure it? Sounds interesting, wonderful idea, right? Now the point was the proof of concept. Now how do I develop the proof of concept? Proof of concept could come from understanding the existing technology. For example, it's not the blood cells maybe, but you can just in the lab do it with any kind of sample where you try to build not only your own nanorobo, but maybe pick any nanorobo from the industry and try to do this concept, technical validation of the project, right? So you are trying to just show them that, yes, let's say this is a cell. The robo may not be nano as of now. It's a big robo. There's a big cell prototype. You want to just show that this is what it will do. It will go grab the cell and it will cure it. It will do all this treatment onto it. This is possible. The only thing which we need to do is miniaturization of this whole concept. So this was the proof of concept. Now, till this stage, nobody is going to give you money. Trust me, it is only rare that on your idea, somebody is going to throw money at you. Nobody in the world will give you money till this stage. It has to be bootstrapped. It has to be from friends and family. So what is bootstrapping? Bootstrapping is, putting your own money back by savings, right? So put your own money and you can convince your friends and family. So I always tell my startups this point: if you cannot convince your papa, you cannot convince anybody in the world, right? Because that is the only person who care about you the most, and he should believe in you the most. If he does not believe in your idea, how can you convince somebody else to believe in your idea and part away with your hard-earned money? Your dad earns for you. Your parents earn for you. They do anything, everything in their life just so that your life becomes comfortable. So their purpose is you. And if they are not convinced with your idea and invest in you, then who else is going to invest in your idea, right? So that's the first validation which you need to get for the investors. It is very, very important that you have pooled some money from your own family and friends, right? Now, once the proof of concept is ready, now you are good to go and try to make a prototype. Now, making a prototype itself is a cost. Now, think of this. I got some robo from market and did this proof of concept. But then now I want to come with a minimum viable product, which means, okay, the product is not yet ready to be injected in a human, but yes, I have developed something where I can show it on some fluid, right? So maybe blood sample taken from some animal in a lab. I can inject nanorobots and try to do something, right? So this whole first minimum viable product is the fish bone. It does not have the skin and the flesh over it, which means it may not look very good. It may not look marketable. It may not have gone through all the testings, but it does what it's supposed to do. Now, to develop it, you need money. Where that money will come from? So that money typically comes from early stage funding, and we'll talk about what these early stage fundings are, right? So which means you'll need some lump sum money at the proof of concept stage, and then your MVP stage, which is called prototyping stage, and typically you should look for prototyping grants. Now these prototyping grants in today's time typically come from incubators. It is very, very rare, or very the probability of you getting prototyping fund from angel investors are very low. So mostly it is the incubators who are going to give you some prototyping fund through their existing schemes, right? Then comes the business model validation. Once you have done the MVP, you want to go and validate that model. During this period, you need a lot of domain expertise, right? You need a lot of domain expertise. You need a lot of regulatory knowledge in the domain where you want to function. You need a lot of handholding and support. Now, all this information is with the people who are who's and who of a given sector, right? So let's say I am working in IT industry. I worked for 20-25 years. Now I've become a VP or a senior vice president, and I know a lot about the IT industry. I have amassed enough wealth for me. My CTC was, from last 10 years, my CTC was 60 lakh rupees. It has come to 1.2 crores rupees now. I have enough money. I have enough saving. My kids are all settled. Somebody is working in Boston Consulting Group. The other one is doctor in US. I don't have need for money. But the want to grow money does not stop. And therefore, I want to create fortunes for my next generation before I retire completely. Or maybe I just want to not work that much and create that growth opportunity for me because I have too much of money lying with me, and I don't want to invest all of it either on debt instruments or equity instruments. Even if I invest in equity instruments, how much will they give me? 10% return? Market? Stock market? I don't want 10% return. I have appetite for risk. If I invest 5 lakh rupees, even if it goes dooms, I don't have problem. Therefore, I want to find a business which can give me maybe 30% return year on year, right? And that is where these angel investors comes into picture, which means you went to the bank said no, and you don't know. Family and friends says we are already exhausted. Now you find some other person to help you. You went to the incubator. Incubator said we'll only give you 50,000. We have only 1 lakh rupees as a prototyping fund. It does not help you, right? That may help you just to do your proof of concept. What do you do now? Now you need maybe 50 lakh rupees to be able to build that marketable prototype. Who will give that money? So these are the people, and that's why they're called angels. When nobody is there to help you, these investors come into picture, and they are able to do it because their ability to assess the risk is much better because they know that domain. So they invest their own personal money. That is not pooled money. That is their own personal money, their own personal wealth, and they will guide you in the whole process. That, and they'll tell you about the regulatory aspect, they'll tell about the industry, they'll tell about the market competition, because they know their industry, they know their domain, they know their technology. And that is when your business model validation happens, and you are, either raise some seed support or angel funding. Then comes the next level, which means commercialization of a product, taking it to the market. Taking the market again is a lot of money which is involved. You need to spend a lot of money in the marketing of the product. You need to do a lot of promotion. You need to do a lot of channel promotion or consumer promotion. You need to do a lot of road shows. You need to give a lot of promotions. Early on, nobody is willing to buy it, etc. So what do? You need a lot of cash, right? Have you heard of it? Is Google ads, Facebook ads, all of it can generate business for you, but they take a lot of money. Some people say that to be able to sell one product, if you're a new company and you're not on these Amazons or Flipkarts and you want to do it from your own site, consumer acquisition cost, even if you want to sell a product worth rupees 100, the consumer acquisition cost for one sale is almost 650 rupees to 850 rupees. So this much money you will have to pour in for your marketing to grab your early consumers. And that money again has to be raised. And that is where people go for venture capital funding. So venture capitals are the people who do not invest their own money. They are professionals. They are trained graduates like MBA who know how to market, they know what should be the go-to-market strategy so that you be able to launch your product. So they are professionals trained into it, and they are wealth managers of some high net worth individuals who have pooled their own money for this cause. so that they can grow, but they do not pick something which is very risky. They pick something which is more proven, right? Which has come in the market. People have started using it. They can see the product. They can feel the product. They can see the consumer reviews. Then only they go and invest in these companies. And these are called venture capital funds. And then there are Series A's. Sometimes it is pre-Series A, Series A, Series B, Series C. Even Series D is there, which means different levels of venture capital funding. And once you think that you have matured enough, then you raise more capital. This is called private equity funding. And sometimes people skip private equity and directly go to IPO. But the question is, why do they go and do IPO? What is the need of doing an IPO? Why Zomato came up with an IPO? Why Flipkart is planning to come up with an IPO? Why do these people go and list themselves in the stock market? Any thought? Anyone would like to share a thought on this? No? Okay. See, it's all about the exit. If I raise a venture capital fund, the angel investors who invested in my company would like to exit after a point. They don't want to stick with my company for eternity. Look how does this whole life cycle, growth cycle of a company looks like, right? This is time and this is growth. So a company in the initial years will grow very fast, then it plateaus, right? So in the early years of growth is very steep, and then it becomes gentle, almost flat here, and then it starts to fall down, right? So this is this period where the angels want to get into picture, but the risk is very high, therefore their expected return is very high. But at this phase, the VCs will be there. The expected return is little lower, or the growth is little lower than this phase. But the point is, if they have taken so much of risk and they have the ability to identify a good startup, a good idea, a good venture, and make this higher growth, then why would they want to lock their money during this phase of your growth where you are giving them lower growth? So they want to exit. And that's where they will force you to go and raise the next level of capital. And similarly, when your growth starts to diminish further and you have now almost plateaued, which means you are just making some consistent, very stable sales. And that is when they also want to exit and say, okay, you go and raise money from the market. Give me an option to exit. Give me an option to go out of this business. And that's why companies are forced to go to the IPO route. It's not that they love it, because there's so much of pain, right? You need to comply with all SEBI requirements, listing requirement, NSE, BSE. Then there will be so many shareholders, DMAT, blah, blah. So you don't want to do all of it. And the moment you get listed, you'll have to share your results quarterly. People will start tracking your business. All the competitors will know about your strategy. There's so many things which you will not be able to hide, which you were able to hide as a company which was not listed. So it's not that they love doing it, but then they will have to do it because they want to give an exit option to their existing investors, right? So I'll come to this curve which talks about the funding, right? So in the grant phase, which is typically the incubator grant or institutional research grant, which you'll get to start with a given project, you may have a healthy cash flow because you have a lot of money in your grant and you want to start this whole project. But then as you start to get into stage 3 and stage 4 of your life cycle, where proof of concept and all that comes into picture, you will start to bleed money. And this continues till the time where you are matured enough to raise an IPO. And during this entire period, your net capital outflow from the company is negative. Net capital inflow is negative, which means outflow is positive, which means you are just spending money, but you are not earning enough. So if you're not earning enough and spending money, where that money will come from? Somebody has to give that money. And these are when investors who will give you money at different stages, right? And this period is called valley of death. Why it is called valley of death? Because if somebody does not support you, you as a company will cease to exist because there is no cash flows. You are negative on cash flows. And therefore, you need to keep generating more and more options which can keep you alive during this valley of death. Right? Okay. Now, coming to the question, why do startups fail? Now, I'll give you a practitioner's view, I'll give you a research view. So it is about lack of market research, and both practitioners and researchers agree on it, that 90% of the startups fail. And this is not only the Indian phenomena, it is a worldwide phenomena, that 90% of the startups, 90 to 95%, in fact, India, it's almost 95% of startups fail in the early 5 to 10 years of their existence. And the reason being lack of market research. I just thought of making something without even thinking if there is a market for it. Incompetent team. If you have a team, for example, I wanted to do nanorobo and I've studied commerce. The idea sounds very interesting of Mr. A, but he can do only if he is a biomedical engineer. But if he is a commerce graduate, he may not be able to do it. And therefore, the right team in the early days, you cannot hire somebody, you cannot think of hiring somebody who will innovate for you. It's very costly, right? So it has to come from you. And you should be able to do it because you are not taking high salaries. There's no cash flows. So without taking salaries, you will do all the key work. So the core of the work should be known to you or your teammates who start, co-founders. So the right team is a very important factor. Wrong clientele, right? I did something and then I want to sell it to the patients directly. Right. For example, this nanorobo for curing cancer. My selection of the clientele is wrong. It's not the patient. I should be selling it to the cancer research centers, right? Because when they say it to the patients will accept it. But if I tell to the patient, they will not accept it. So clientele is also very important. High product market competition. And the second point is also connected to it, which is, for example, if I want to get into today's market of, let's say, food delivery or e-commerce, I'm already late, right? It's not that I cannot succeed. I can still succeed, but my amount of money which I'll have to pour to be able to succeed is much, much higher because the product market competition is high. So don't get into a market which is not yet developed. Otherwise, you are too early. And if you are too early, you'll have to spend a lot of cash to develop that market, right? Think of, some kind of gourmet dish or gourmet or let's say any kind of food which is not commonly used in India. It is very, very, I mean, very, very less percentage of Indians use that. Now, if you want to take it to every home and to be making a business out of it, you will need to tell the uses and the benefits of this product to everybody and why it is so healthy for them, etc., etc. Right? How many ads do you see about the benefits of oat? Because oat was not commonly used in India. So if you really want to take it to the market, you'll have to do a lot of marketing to first tell people about it, to educate people about it. So therefore, if you are too early in a business and the market is yet not ready for it, then you will take a lot of time to be able to make them understand about this product. And if you are too late, which means product market competition is too high, and therefore your cost of customer acquisitions becomes very high, and your probability of success also becomes lower. Right? And the second last one is the launch location, which means what location you want to start your business. For example, I want to start free home delivery of vegetables in Guntur. It may not be that successful because a lot of people have Guntur may be a small place, a lot of people have a lot of time, or maybe Vijayanagaram. It's a very small city, right? Nobody has real pain in identifying a vegetable shop and buying it. They have all the time in their life. But maybe if you think of something like this in Bombay or Bangalore, where people spend 2 to 3 hours of their life just commuting to office, it may be a very valuable deal for them, right? Because it's comfort. Think of urban company, which was earlier called Urban Clap, giving all these services in a small city of Bihar. Then who is so interested about finding a barber who can come to their house and do it? When they have access to it, they can just walk to a barber shop. It's not a pain for them. They have all the time in their life. They go 10 in the office, come back to their home at 5, and anything which they want to access is within 3 kilometers in the city. Why would such a service even develop in that area? But this is a pain, finding a plumber, right? I don't know. I'm new to the city. Migrated to that city, and therefore I may not know where to find a plumber, where to find a carpenter. I have so many issues. Morning 7, if I don't go out of the home, I'll not get a space in the local trains. If I don't get place in the local train, I will have to spend 3 hours to go to office. I'll be late to office. Half day will be deducted. There's so many problems, right? And therefore, if such a service is available there, I'm more willing to take it. And therefore, the launch location is also very important for your business to succeed. And I just kept it last because that's the occasion we are talking more about. We are going to talk more about this. Is the inefficient access and management of fund, although this is the second most important factor of all, right? That running out of cash, which means getting into the value of debt and nobody willing to support you. I'll just take a pause here. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Sir, there are few questions posted in the chat box, sir.
Can you just read out for me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, there's a question that how to approach for angel funding.
Yes, I'll answer that. The best way to approach angel funding is get associated with some incubators. So I will come to that point. What is the next question?
Who is eligible for central government Mudra scheme?
Everybody is eligible.
Those
It's
two
just
questions are just posted, sir.
okay. ठीक है. I will talk about both as we move ahead. So they are
Okay,
part of my slides as we move ahead, right? Okay.
Okay, sir.
So,
Thank
right.
you, sir.
So inefficient access and management of fund is second most important problem and why startups fail, and therefore it is important to be talked about. Now, startups typically, and especially the early stage startups, typically want and look for venture capital funding, and that is most important. There are many startups who did angel, who want to get angel funding, but angel funding is limited in countries like India. Second, it is also about awareness, and the reason being, see, if you are in US versus you are in India, the number of high net worth individuals are much higher in US than India. And these high net individuals, again in India, there are very few who come from these technology dominated space. So therefore, these are the people who will become angel investors, and the number of angel investors are low. So venture capital is one thing which all of our startups are after. But always remember, venture capital funding can only happen when your business is established, which means your proof of concept is done, your MVP is done, you have launched your product in the market, and people have started using your product, right? So till this point, it does not mean you are making profit, but you are live with your product in the market and you have generated or captured a good market share, and that is only when the venture capitalist will come and support you. So the major funding comes in the venture capital space, right? But Angel, micro, VC, and individual sector investor space is something which is again most prevalent and is thought after. Nowadays, corporate investors have also started coming in, because let's say I'm a company like Carvi, or I'm a company like you know any of these let's say technology fintech companies. Now they want to do some innovation. They want to bring or build a new product which is very technology based. But then the cost of innovation in a established company is very high, right? For example, if I have to develop, let's say, a robo advisory system, right, which can advise all my clients based on their personal need, that what kind of investment, what kind of stock, what is the duration of that investment, etc. Then I may have to do some kind of software with a very strong AI based backend which can support all that activity. Somebody has to develop it. If I'm an established company, I'll have to find a project manager, then a competent team. No, the moment I get associated with a big team, I have expectation of higher salary because I do not have any equity in the company, right? So I'll take higher salary. So I have to have a structure. The project manager will report to some director, so that director will report to a VP. So all that time, if you factor in, and the high cost of that office space which they have hired, so the cost of innovation is much, much higher. But if you give this task to a startup through some certain hackathon, they will just eat Maggie, work in a workshop or a small rented house, and they will bring the same innovation to you at a much lower time. They don't want 9 to 5. They just want to sleep 4 hours and just work on it because they want to prove, they want to grow, right? So the cost of innovation is very low. Therefore, a lot of corporate investors are also now coming in. It is called corporate VC, where they want to invest in certain technology and to get that innovation at a much cheaper cost, right? And only very few go organic growth way. We had one of the startup which never raised fund from ideation to this stage. They, I mean, last March when we collected data from them, she was doing a monthly revenue of 1 crore with a margin of 20-25%, right? And she completely grew organically. So all of this is possible. Now, again, looking at the long-term goals of these startups, it has been found that 50% of them just look for acquisition, right? The Bunsells are out of Flipkart, and so are so many other investors who started their own companies, right? Uh, be it that Urban Ladder or many other companies, right? Where you might have heard about these early founder group leaving the company and hand it over to somebody else. So, or they stay in the company, but they get acquired. Like Flipkart got acquired by uh, Walmart. Again, uh, you know, these lot of these small startups, they look for this kind of innovation. So 50% of them look for acquisition, which means they want to raise a vertical or raise a business and then sell it to some bigger player, because there are two problems with it. At one point you do not have enough money to sustain, and therefore you want to sell it and exit, because your investors will force you to do that. They want an exit, right? The other, only 18% reach to the IPO stage, uh, 17% stay private, and 15% don't know what to do with it, right? Okay, so we have talked about it. So let me come to this point, that why do some startups get funded easily? The first and foremost point is your revenue model and valuation. Your revenue model should be very clear, right? You should be in a revenue model which makes commercial sense. A lot of revenue models we have seen where people want to do so many things, and the revenue model is not very clean to understand, and therefore so is your valuation. So your valuation, for example, why do uh, uh, Facebook got valued so higher when the first time they were they went for valuation, right? So that happened just because they were not getting too much of business. It was a common platform on which you do a lot of socializing, but then what was in for them at that point in time? It was the revenue model, right? So the evaluation came from the number of people who are on that platform and the number of subscribers to that platform, because their revenue model which they explained to the investors was from these advertisement which we'll do later, right? What was the revenue model of WhatsApp? They just started, right? They just started, but they knew, and they said that we are not going to, flood you with any advertisement. So your chat is going to be completely secure, no unnecessary trouble in terms of notifications, advertisement, and that was the core, success for them. But what they did was the back end, right? They had generated so much of user base who are personally connected to them. So tomorrow, if I open it for businesses and give them some additional access to use this user base and to be able to do some analytics with the data, I do not share the data with them. I do analytics for them and share with them. That is where my valuation comes from, right? So that's why some startups get funded easily. If you can identify that future value in your company which you are generating through your existing model, revenue model, you have a higher chance of getting funded. The next one is type of information asymmetry and choice of funding source. uh, for example, Mr. A and Mr. B, Mr. A nanorobo, information asymmetry was very high, right? It's very difficult for the investors to understand what you're doing unless until they are also domain expert. So there's high information asymmetry because technology is difficult, and therefore the choice of funding is very important. If he goes to a bank, the probability that he get funded is lower. But if he go to equity, especially angel investors, the probability is higher, right? Bad investor pitch deck or the quality of the pitch. Your business is good, your revenue model is good, and if you have not presented the idea in a very sequential and convincing manner, again you are gone. Right mix of founding team and their level of involvement, right? I have so many sleeping partners, the investors does not care about it. You should have active partners, right? So and they should have right complementing skill to complete you as a venture, rather than everybody is a mechanical engineer and nobody knows what to do with business, nobody knows what to do with marketing, and therefore you are dependent on every other thing, right? So that should not be the case. Multi-stage exit study, there has to be an exit strategy. If it is not there in the presentation, people does not like you, right? Then the next one is founder capital and history of bootstrapping. That's why bold, kept it in bold. Your own capital should show up in whatever you have done till this point in time. It may be small, but it proportionately it should look of, let's say if you are a employee who is earning 5 to 7 lakhs a year and you have started a business leaving your job, and if you have invested almost 1 year of worth of your income, which shows quite a lot of commitment, right? So your bootstrapping, keeping back in your own business, your savings are important aspects, right? Timing is another thing. At what stage you went for that fundraising? Too early, the probability may be difficult. Too late, then you should be going to the right person, right? And the last one is support of incubator and accelerator. And why I kept it at last, because that is where we are going to build it from. So this is very important for you if you are a startup at an early stage, that you find an incubator which is which is good for you, because see, it's all about the transaction cost. If I am an investor, I want to invest in good startups. I want to first identify them, right? And think of it, let's say you want to eat good dosa, right? What do? You will find a shop, you will ask somebody who is a good dosa shop, or maybe a good biryani. You will ask where is a good biryani shop. You will go try that biryani, you do not like that biryani. Then maybe again you will ask some more people, you will do some research on the net. Then again you will go to another shop, that shop may not be good again. You did not like that biryani, it was either too spicy or too less spicy. So this is the transaction cost of identifying something new, right? And so similarly, the people who have need for fund versus the people who have access of fund, both of them want to meet each other. But how do I find? I cannot keep shouting on the road. Do you have access fund? Do you have access fund? Do you have access fund? Do you want to invest in my business? But does he have time to listen to me? Even if I catch hold of him in some party on or a traffic light, it has to be hardly 1 or 2 minutes. Will he get convinced? Right. So it is all about transaction cost. So investors also want to reduce their transaction cost, and therefore they want to go to a place where probability of finding that is much higher, right? So if I need to find a good teacher for my institute, will I go to a sabji mandi, or will I go to a film city, or will I go to another institution which has a PhD program? I will go to another institution which has a PhD program, because these are the people who are trained to do teaching. Therefore, I can find a good teacher for my institute. Therefore, these investors will also, to reduce their transaction cost, would look for a place which has access of these people who are in need of fund. And then they can just go at one place, cherry pick somebody and go away. Why do companies come for campus placement? They can just advertise and find people, right? They are good established companies, but they also want to reduce the transaction cost. They want to reduce the number of applications they have to filter. Therefore, they choose the good companies, the institutes or the colleges, and only go there. There also they will put a criteria. I want to interview only top 10% of your students. So that is the reduction of the transaction cost, and that's what the incubators and accelerator does in the probability of you getting a fund. And what is the right? So see, there are two type of these incubators and accelerators. Incubators are the one which supports a startup at the idea stage, right? Typical duration is 1 to 3 years. When you come from idea stage, proof of concept, maximum till minimum viable product. After that, there are very few incubators who are capable of supporting, who does both incubator and accelerator programs. Now, accelerator program, on the other hand, gives you a different, that comes at a later stage, which means you already have a marketable product, but now you want know-how and support and higher investment to be able to commercialize in the market. And that is where accelerator comes into picture. Any accelerator program, if any incubator runs, will be in support of any given angel investor network. So that is where the angel investor network comes into picture. They only select you to the accelerator program with some kind of support, and then there is that exit will happen through a pitch in front of VCs. While an incubator will just take you and give you some kind of basic mentoring and support, at max some prototyping support, and the exit from incubator happens at a demo day or pitch day, where these angel investor networks are invited and they listen to you. So look for a good incubator near you, right? What kind of different institutions? I mean, incubators are there. There are incubations associated with host institutions like academic and university, NGO, or industry body, or it can be sector focused or area agnostic incubator. So if you are very much into biotech, you are very much into edutech, try and find an incubator which is more sector focused so that they can support you. Then these incubators are also for profit, non for profit. So for profit will only cherry pick the ones which have higher probability of success so that they can gain from the equity they invest into it. But non for profit will, if your venture is either little less competitive as of now, or it has social angle to it, then it's good for you to choose a non for profit incubator. And then again, location, tier 1 metros, tier 2, or rural area. It also depends upon your location, which is ideal for your business. So depending upon what suits well for your business, pick an incubator of that. If you are doing an urban clap or urban company kind of company, venture, then you should go for an incubator at tier 1 or metro cities. If you are doing, a venture, let's say something like Flipkart, you can be in any station, right? You can be at any city. The only thing is that city's connectivity should be good, because early days, all the logistics has to be handled from that place, right? So that is something which you need to look for. Now, it is also important to know what startups look from an incubator, and what you should be looking from an incubator, that they should have high uh, uh, congruence between your startups point of business or focus area and the incubator's focus area. If you are a agri-tech incubator and you are incubated in an incubator which has a focus of fintech, there will be no good mentors for you, right? And therefore that's a bad choice. Good administrative team, they should be empathetic and not pathetic, they should be empathetic and encouraging. They should be encouraging, because these are some things which you will be very much in needed. So they should not be just living in some uh, uh, you know uh, random space. They should be grounded, they should be able to understand your problem, they should have empathy. uh, Availability of prototyping and seed funds. So incubators which should have something. It's only that I will give you space does not matter, right? Space your father can also give you. It's not only the space where you can put your laptop and have a coffee from a vending machine. No, it's also about some kind of prototyping and seed fund support. They should have connect with investors, corporates, and regulators. They should have good reputation in industry, because if you go with a card saying I'm incubated at so and so incubator, if that incubator or the host institute of that incubator has a good reputation, you get easy access to those people, right? They have a good mentorship pool, that is very important, strong network and ecosystem, and availability of good support services like, IP related support, legal support. All those support should be there at a very lower cost. And last but not the least, good lab facilities. If not directly in the incubator, they should have connections with other research institutions who can provide that lab. Now, very briefly, I'll talk about this India story, because what we saw till now is mostly the global story. Now, India of late have progressed quite a lot in this startup ecosystem, and therefore this is the right time for anybody to get into it, plunge into it, and do something. Now, if you look at the statistics in the last uh, you know uh, very recent time, if you look at it, we have around 55,000 startups which have cropped up in the country, with more than 3,200 startup raising $63 billion in funding in the last 5 years itself, right? Which is quite a good amount of money given what we were able to do earlier. Again, if you look at the focus, most of these startups have come in the metro region, either Bangalore, Delhi NCR, Mumbai, or Chennai. Chennai are very less. And again, Pune, Hyderabad, and look at the surprising, starking difference between Hyderabad and Bangalore, although both of them were, at one point competing with each other in terms of their ability to become the Silicon Valley of India, right? So it's also about the kind of ecosystem support which the local government would have provided to these startups, right? So the other thing which I wanted to let you know is, you know, the kind of investment environment which is there in India. So it is estimated that approximately 4,500 plus active investors are there in India who do invest in startups. Either it can be NBFCs, it can be banks, it can be any other financial institutions, or angel investors, VC, PE, etc. Among these, majority, which means almost 60%, are angel investors, and 18% are venture capital firm. But if you remember, the quantum of investment happens through VC, because the VC deals are large in size and angel deals will be very small in size. Angels will give you 20 lakh, 30 lakh, 10 lakh, but VCs will give you, $1 million, $3 million, $2 million, $500,000, and therefore that becomes very large in terms of the amount they invest. And if you look at the year on year, the investment in India in this space is increasing. If you look at it, 20 was a little bad because of COVID, but again 21 has picked up. We are growing pretty fast compared to where we started in 2015-16, where this whole ecosystem started to grow. And coming from the stage-wise activity, the major funding at the late stage, and that's because we are in a developing country, uncertainties are there. The investors do not want to take too much risk, and therefore they will only come and jump at a later stage. Very few will come at the growth stage, and very few will come at the early stage, right? So try to get connected with an incubator who can give you that initial support and connect for you, so that you can tap from this limited early and growth stage angel investors. And the late investment always comes from VC. So it may also happen that you spend 4 years without any investment, and then on the fifth year you get the first angel investment, right? So it's not about the period which you spend with your venture, but it's about the maturity of your venture for these investors to invest in, right? So they want you to first fail, and those who fail and die, they are left, and the only which could succeed for certain years, be alive, that's the test, you know, uh, uh, test to your own strengths, and that is where they want to reduce their transaction cost of identifying a wrong business and then investing in it and losing their money. Now, if you look at sector wise, I mean, in India, fintech and financial services have raised a lot of funding thanks to some big deals which has happened in this space, especially for your Paytm and some of the others like Razorpay, etc. Then edutech and education services are the second biggest, thanks to Byju's and many more like them. Food tech is third one. You know, it's very obvious. Zomato, then your Swiggy and others. E-commerce space is the fourth one, which once was the highest when Flipkart, Myntra, and Snapdeal, etc., were at four. Next is healthcare services, then enterprise tech and retail consumer brands. So that is what where the most of the funding is going, which means investors are more interested what the future looks like. Now, that's an estimate which is for 2025. That number of startups in India is expected to cross 100,000. So today we are standing at 55,000 startups. We are saying it has to, within next 4 years, we'll double it almost, creating more than 3.25 million jobs in the process, which is a good amount of job which it will create, right? And they are likely to the investments are likely to increase to 150 billion, and the total value creation which these ventures will do is more than 500 billion. That's quite a lot which can get added to the GDP. Now, so we know that timing is right. We know that you need to ideate and get the early support from your family and maybe an incubator. And whenever you get a chance to pitch in front of an investor, what are the key things which you should be careful about in your investor pitch deck? See, investors may not give you all the time. They cannot listen to your story for half an hour the way you are doing because your institute has forced you to sit and listen to me, or your professors will force you to sit in the classes and you will have to listen to them. But investors are not forced to listen to you, right? So they don't have all the time. They'll give you 5 to 7 minutes max, sometimes only 2 to 3 minutes. And that is where you have to make a very strong presentation and pitch which can give the complete story of who you are, what you want to do, and why they should invest in you, right? So that these are some of these much talked about points in your presentation. That does not mean that all of them should have a separate slide, right? Because you should not have more than 5 to 7 slides, at max 9. I never advise anybody to go in double digit in number of slides, because even if you have one slide, you will end up speaking 1 minute on that, right? So try to limit it to 5 slides to 7 slides. That's more than enough, but it should capture all these points. What is the company? right? What are your mission and vision on the company? Although people, it's not about wording your mission and vision, but what vision do you have? For example, there's a company called Urban Kisan. So their vision is that everybody grow their own vegetables at home. You don't have to depend on, these mandis and buying vegetables from outside. If you want leafy vegetable, there's a tower. You go and just pick vegetables from the tower. You don't need soil. There's no hydroponics is something which they're using. So there's a vision to it, right? So you're saying that, okay, I want to, because slowly urbanization will happen and therefore the Kisan will go and you, the urban population, have to become your own Kisan. So that's the vision, right? So your vision should have clarity. What you are, why do you exist? Why a company like you should exist? That should be very clear. Very quickly about your team and why every element of your team is so important for your core vision, right? To be able to succeed in what you want to do. The problem. What problem are you going to solve? Is it a pain point or is it a gap? Right? Gap can be, for example, Uber was already there, but Ola came in India. There was a gap in India. There was no such service in India. Right? Amazon was already there in US. Flipkart started. There was a gap. Right? That was that gap they filled. There can be pain points also. Right? For example, urban clap, it was a pain point. A lot of people had this pain in identifying these service providers, and therefore I came up with a solution which can reduce their pain. Right? I don't have time and go and sit in these restaurants because there's a lot of transaction cost. Some restaurant is very good at given place. Old Delhi, so much of crowd. I live in South Delhi. वहाँ से यहाँ जाना, it's too much difficulty for me, and therefore I don't want to do it. But if somebody can get that food to me, yes, I'm happy to eat it because maybe old Hyderabad or old Delhi would have some small shop which does the best cuisine, which my palate likes. Therefore, the problem has to be very clearly identified and articulated, right? What is the problem which you're going to solve? Very crisply talk about the solution which you're going to provide. For example, this Zomato, right? We want to deliver food from any corner of the city to any other corner in 20 minutes while maintaining the the time of delivery of so and so minutes, वगैरह वगैरह, right? So that's the kind of solution you talk about, the broad basic solution which you're going to provide. Don't start to get into the operational detail. Let them ask you about the operational detail. You say that in 10 minutes. How are you going to do it? How much cost do you have to do it? Will you hire people or you rent people? All that is operational detail. Don't talk about it. Talk about the core solution which you're going to provide. Then talk about the market opportunity. You should know your market. What is the total scope of the market? What is the size of the market? What you plan for you to be able to capture and why, right? So that should very easily systematically come. That is a bigger circle. It's total market of which this much lies in India, of which this is the market which is there in this city, of this there are these I am expecting to get 5 to 10% of this market in next 3 years, right? So that should be very clearly outlined there. The product, the customers, and the technology, you should talk about it very briefly, that what is the product or service which you're coming up with, which is the next step of the solution which you're providing, right? Then again, there's a newness which you are bringing to it, either in process or in product. So what is that new technology which is going to bind everything together to give you that competitive advantage? Then the 10th point, you should be aware of your competition. You cannot just go and say, there are no much bigger players in the market. But who are they? What do they do? So you should be able to, and it is almost as important as, the faculties will appreciate it when we write a paper. We talk about limitations of our paper. It's not that any paper will not have limitations. You should know your limitations. Therefore, as a company, you should know your competitors. I am into in space. Who are the people who are doing the same product? Who are the people who are doing a similar product? Who are the people who are doing a different product but that meets the same need? So you should know, if I'm trying to go and sell books online, my competitors are these book retail shops, which are their retail shops. These are competitors. Their channel is different, but they are the competitors. There are all these old second-hand market of the books. They are the competitors. My publishers are competitors because they are also now selling books online or e-copies, right? So all of these, my public library is one of my competitors. So you should know who your competitors are, direct and indirect, and should have a good understanding about it. Now talk about the traction which you will be able to generate, which means what is your unique value proposition. Talk about your business model, where you can talk about the revenue model, that how you're going to generate money from it, and it has to be very crisp, right? And then all of it can be 12 13 12 and 14 can be clubbed together, business model and financials. You need to give some projections of the next 3 years at least, right? And then what is your marketing plan? How much money are you going to invest? What should be the marketing promotion strategy? Will you do digital marketing, or you will do channel promotion? You will give money to your channel partners, or directly to consumers in form of rebates and discounts or coupons, etc. So you should know about it. Then it is important to very briefly mention your current equity structure, right? In the same slide, you mention if you have raised any money, what is the amount of money which you have put already in the business, either through bootstrap, your friends and family, or any other investor who had invested in you, right? And then ask you ask what is the money which you want, and when you say it, you should know why you want to do it, right? So the ask should be a separate slide, right? Ask should be a separate slide which talks about how much money do you need from those investors and why do you need it, right? So you should be able to tell at which life cycle you are and how are you going to use that money and how that will bring growth to your company, right? So that is something which you should be very clear about. And at the end, it may not have a separate slide. In the ask only, at the end you can mention about the exit options for these current investors, that yes, this is our ask and we want to go for the next round of funding after 3 years, after 2 years, after 5 years, right? And what would be the next round of funding? So this is something which you need to talk about, right? So majorly that's the points which I wanted to talk about. I'll take another 10 minutes, and then I'll try to answer as many questions as you have. See, whenever we talked about this, that you should find a good incubator and go and get incubated there. So not only these incubators, but also the investors look for these in a startup at an early stage, right? If you go at a later stage, which means you have already a proven business model, you already have proven your revenue generating capabilities. But at the early stage, it is all about these points which we have highlighted here, and this comes from the experience of many top leaders of incubators, many top investors, and the research which has gone into it. The first and the foremost is the intrinsic motivation and drive. If you cannot demonstrate that, all is done. So it should come from your own intrinsic motivation. It's just not because college has asked you to do it. It's not because your friends are doing it. It's not because entrepreneurship is a cool thing. You should believe in the idea, the value which you want to create from that business. If you don't believe in it, that intrinsic motivation and drive will not show up, right? Second, educational and professional background of the founder with proposed domain. I want to do a nano robo. I'm a commerce graduate. No, it's a complete no for me. Even if you show that intrinsic motivation, I know you will not be able to do it. It's all about your ability to do, and that is very important. Your educational or professional background should have the congruence with the idea which you are bringing to the table. You cannot just bring a random idea and say I'll be able to do it. You may be able to do it, but investors don't want to give their hard-earned money to you, right? Now, goal congruence. There has to be a goal congruence, right? Which means if they are a biotech investors and you go to them with an agri-tech idea, they still may find it very interesting and sometime invest, but most of the time they want to limit to their scope of jurisdiction or scope of knowledge, and therefore they will not go out and invest. So either if you do not have a good focused incubator to your own domain, then go for an area agnostic incubator which incubates for for startups in any area which do not have any area focus, like general business incubators. Next one, your coachability and pivotability of founders, which means you should not be very rigid. See, being confident is one thing and being stupid is another thing. So don't be stupidly rigid on any point. Rigidity is not always good, right? So you should be open to it. So you came up with a value. It's not about the solution, it's about the value which you want to create, right? So if that value can be achieved through some other channel, you should be open to explore that other solution options, because the solution which you're proposing today may not be viable, and at one point you will hit a roadblock and your mentors will suggest you to try something different to do it, and then you should be open to listen to that, right? So that they'll want to look at, are you coachable and pivotable? If not, they don't want to take you, right? The next one, you should have a hard working team, right? Solo is good, but trust me, if you have a team, people like it. Again, but there are challenges with the team. If you are in a team and the team happens to be your siblings, happens to be your spouse, then again there's a problem, because it has been seen historically that siblings and spouse do not go well in business, right? In professional things, they are good as family, but when they get into these conflicting views, there's a lot of friction, a lot of ego, which builds up very soon, which is not there with your friends, right? So don't it's a not complete no, but then again, yes, it is not advised that you show your siblings and your spouse as your key co-founders, right? If required, if they are there, you can show it, but it's not that you need to flaunt it too much, right? Quality and timing of idea, again, this is important, but not as important as most of the point which we talked about, right? So your quality of idea should be good and timing should also be right. You should not be too early or too late. So to sum up, people first, idea second, market size is third, and communication and charisma is the fourth. So if you have somebody in your co-founding team who has the ability to go and just with his charm convince somebody, have him in his team, have in your team, because this is also important. Somebody needs to stand there for 2 minutes and convince somebody. If somebody have that natural charisma or charm, if they have it, there is more probability of you letting somebody listen to you more carefully, and therefore that is another important thing. So where to start with this lean canvas model. You can just google it, lean canvas model by Ash Maurya, who happens to be a professor at Harvard University, who has developed this small form of business your plan. So business plan can have different structures, but for a startup it's a one common structure. If you can put the entire idea on this canvas and fill it, then you think you are ready to be able to answer a lot of these questions which these investors will ask you, right? So that is where you start. So I'll conclude at this slide. Top funding options for an early stage entrepreneurs in India. You do bootstrapping, and with your own startup or your own savings. Crowdfunding has also come up as good options today. There are some of the crowdfunding sources like Indiegogo or Wishberry, Keto, Fundline, Catapult. So these are some crowdfunding sources where you just put your idea and say, this is the money I need. A lot of people who are interested in it can give you small contributions, and that is how you crowdsource. So they have their own model how they work, but crowdfunding is also nowadays coming up big time for startups. Get angel investment in your startup, and this can happen through incubators or directly reaching out to angel networks. But then again, before you reach out to angel networks, just don't go with bare idea. Try at least proof of concept, if not MVP, right? Then get funding from business incubators and accelerators. In today's time, I will say this is the best way to go about, because government is spending a lot of money. All the institutions are coming up with incubators, and all these incubators will have some kind of funding support and networking support. So that's maybe a good place to start with in today's time. Raise fund by winning contest. This is very interesting and very good also. A lot of these, organizations who get some government funding, they will just do some competition. And that, why do they do it? A higher number of applicants to apply so that their pool is high. So tomorrow, if whatever program they are doing, they can send mailers to them. And that's why they do all these business competitions or startup competitions. And second, they finish their mandate that I did a big event, so many participants participated into it. But that's also very interesting. If you are a serious startup, you have got a good opportunity to go and apply in these contests and win. One of our startups last year, they applied for this STPI competition called Chunati. They won it. They got 25 lakh rupees as a seed capital. So it's a good way of getting some fund for your own venture. And these money which comes as competition and winning of competition just comes to you as a grant. It will not even take your equity. So that's a good way of going about it. Then again, see, if you are a venture, it's not that if you are a startup you cannot raise from banks. You just need to understand that if their information asymmetry is lower, your cash flows are going to be consistent and you are not constrained with the cash flow, you can always go and raise some money from the bank. And especially given that these days, banks have also come up with government support where government is giving the guarantee for startups, and therefore the liability for you to give collaterals, etc., are reduced, especially schemes like Mudra. And then there is a lot of mandate for these banks also, if they are public sector banks, if they're bank of this size and larger, that they should invest in startups, right? So therefore they also have a liability. So if you reach out to them, you have a good business idea, and it is not path breaking, which means it's easy to convince them, then you can get loan at a cheaper rate. So that is something which you should explore. Mudra is open to anybody. The only problem is that the ticket size is not very large, right? So you may get, if it's a small bank loan, working capital loan, all is very easy to get. So look for those options. Get business loan from microfinance providers or NBFCs. They also look for investment option because they are into this lending business. Their rates may be a little higher than banks, but again, if you need money, you have a serious opportunity and it's just the money which is holding you back, and if you get that money and you can generate return, by all means go for it, right? So a lot of microfinance agencies and NBFCs are there, institutions which are willing to lend money to startups, but not at idea stage. They typically lend at your commercialization stage. Now, government programs that offer startup capital like seed, Startup India there is seed support. Then there are different ministries who will come with different programs. For example, METI comes with Tide. Then there are MSME ministry, the Niti Aayog. So all these will come up with DST with different offers for startup capital. So you can start, keep looking for them and applying for them. The last one, if you really get into a situation where you have to raise money and all the other options are not clicking for you, look for options like product pre-sale, right? Identify the people who are the early adopters and tell them about your product and say that we are doing, but then they need to give you advance payment, some part payment. And that's the best way to, take care of your working capital requirement, or get into some kind of, business credit card. A lot of companies, a lot of fintech companies give this option to you, or some credit from your vendors, etc. So these, or maybe at times you may have to do some asset sell. So you might have bought a equipment, you may not need it because you're not operating at capacity. So it may also call at points where you want to just sell your asset and rather just rent something and live with it for the time being to raise that capital which is needed for you to keep alive as a company, right? So do all of it. So that's where I'll take a pause. I'll just not talk about anything of it. Just let me know your questions. I will just go through these slides just to show you what all we do. We do Women Startup Program, TIDE, right, which are basically cohort based. And yeah, some of our startups have raised some good money. They've got a lot of recognition. Yeah, thank you. So I'm open to any questions if you have.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Now, I request the participants to post their questions in the chat box if they have any. I request the participants to post their questions in the chat box if there are any. So there's a question, sir.
Yeah.
Is exit options to be explained from investors' point of view?
Yes. Exit options from the investor point of view. You exiting the business, nobody will invest, right? So it's not that you want to show that I want to exit by selling it off at some point, but rather you should be explaining the investors that when will I provide you the exit opportunity. For example, if somebody has invested, let's say 50 lakhs in your company and you have given them 10% of equity or 5% of equity, they don't want to stay in the company after 3 or 4 years because the growth expectation, I mean, the probability of growth after 4 years will be lower than at what pace you can grow now. So maybe, the whole size of the company, they have invested 10% with 50 lakh is 5 crores, right? Is the total worth of the company. Now, if you can grow your company in 3 years to say from 5 crore to 10 crore, it's almost 100% return for them in 3 years, right? Now they want to exit, but you do not have money to give them if they want to exit, right? They want to sell their shares. Whom do they sell their shares? Public does not know about this company well, so they have to find somebody to whom they can sell the shares. If they want to sell the shares to you, you may not have money because you are a startup, right? You are just raising money and living, and the whole focus is growth. So you cannot just give away that money. So what do? You find some other investors who can again invest in your company, and then whenever you raise money, if let's say you as a company require uh, uh, 5 crores or 2 crores at that point in time, right, for your investments, then you will go and raise money at the tune of 3 crores. And this additional cash which you have raised, that you will use to give this existing investor an exit option. And that is how all these investments are done. So you should mention it, that is how I plan. So in third year or fourth year, I'll go for next round of funding. So they will know. And also you can tell that how much I am expecting to retire your investments, right? So maybe I will, in the first round of investment which I do, I will give you an option to retire 75% of your investment. And that is an open option. If you want, you retire. If you don't want, you continue with me, right? And then again, the next round of investment, I can give you 100% of option to retire. If you want, you do, or if you don't want to exit, you continue with me. But you should clearly mention that is where we want to give you an exit option.
Thank
Any
you,
other
sir.
question?
I request the participants to post their questions in the chat box if there are any. Once again, I request the participants to post their questions in the chat box. Okay, thank you. Dear sirs and participants, for the memory of this event purpose, please switch on the video for a few seconds. We'll have a snapshot. I request the participants to switch on the camera for a few seconds. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, one and all.
Sarvan, we can conclude now.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Please, Karan.
Now, I would request the participants to fill the Google feedback form, which is posted in the chat box for the e-certificates. I repeat, Now, I would request the participants to fill the Google feedback form, which is posted in the chat box for the e-certificates.
You can propose vote of confidence.
So finally, I conclude this webinar by saying thanks to our Honorable Vice President, Mr. Satish Meka, sir. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank our Honorable Principal, sir, Dr. Yash Shambhu Prasad, sir. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank our Vice Principal, sir. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank our resource person, Dr. M. Shamim Javed, sir, for making us know about funding at the startups and their processes. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank our HOD sirs of respectable departments. Thank you, sirs. I would like to thank our management staff, faculty members, technical staff, students, and all the participants for making this webinar a grand successful one. I request the participants to use the same joining link for the afternoon session as well. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.
Sir,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
for your
Thank you,
valuable
Lord, sir,
presentation.
for your nice delivery and content. We are highly grateful to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.